The bus station was the kind of place that always smelled like cold coffee and old rain, like 100 goodbyes had soaked into the tile and never left. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a pale, sleepless glow. People moved in tired lines. A janitor pushed a mop like he'd been doing it for decades. The digital board clicked and changed times with a sharp beep that sounded too loud in the midnight quiet. And then she ran in. Not walked, not hurried, ran, like the floor might fall out from under her if she stopped. She was holding her belly with one hand and a crumpled paper ticket with the other. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, but strands had escaped and clung to her forehead like she'd been crying or sweating or both. A puffy jacket hung open over a thin sweater, and her sneakers were mismatched, one black, one gray, as if she'd left home in a panic and didn't even notice. "Wait, please," she gasped at the ticket counter, voice breaking. "I missed the last bus! I missed it! The clerk didn't even look up from his computer. "Last departure was 11:50. Next bus is 6:15. Her eyes went wide, and for a second she looked like she might actually collapse. 6:15? She whispered. That's in 6 hours. "Ma'am, I don't make the schedule." The words hit her like a shove. She backed away from the counter, clutching her belly like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And that's when she saw him. He'd been sitting near the vending machines, half asleep, waiting for his daughter's aunt to drop her off after a late dance rehearsal. He wasn't supposed to be here this late. Nothing in his life ran on midnight schedules anymore. But tonight, everything had gone wrong in the kind of slow, exhausting way that made a person feel like the universe was keeping score. Caleb Hartley was 35 and looked older than he was, not because he didn't take care of himself, he did, but because single parenthood carved time into a man's face. There were faint lines at the corners of his eyes from worry and from forced smiles. His hoodie smelled like motor oil and laundry soap. He worked days at a small auto shop outside town and nights doing side jobs because raising a kid alone made money feel like water, always running out no matter how careful you were. He was also the kind of man who noticed things, like the way the pregnant woman's breathing was too fast, too shallow, like the way her hands shook as she tried to pull her phone out only to stare at a black screen. Like the way she kept looking at the exit doors, then back at the station, like she didn't know which was safer. Caleb stood before he even realized he was moving. He didn't do it because he thought he was a hero. He didn't do it because he was looking for a love story. He did it because there was something in her panic that felt familiar, like the echo of a night 4 years ago when his own world had tilted and he'd realized there was no one coming to save him, not unless he saved himself. "Hey," he said gently, stopping a few feet away so he wouldn't startle her. "Are you okay?" She flinched like she'd forgotten other people existed. Then she looked at him, really looked, and her eyes filled with tears that made them shine under the fluorescent lights. I'm sorry," she whispered, as if she'd done something wrong just by being scared. I didn't mean to make a scene." "You're not making a scene. You're pregnant and you're stranded. That's not nothing." She pressed her lips together hard, trying not to cry. The effort made her chin tremble. "My phone died. I can't call anyone, and I don't even know if I should." Caleb glanced around. The station was thinning out. A couple dozed on a bench. A security guard walked by with a bored expression. Outside, the parking lot was slick with rain, reflecting streetlights like scattered coins. "Do you have somewhere you're trying to get?" he asked. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, Caleb heard a story, not a simple missed bus story, something heavier. "Riverton," she said finally. Caleb's eyebrows lifted. "Riverton? That's like 200 miles. "I know," her voice cracked. "I know. I didn't plan any of this right." Caleb ran a hand over his face. 200 miles was not a small favor. 200 miles was gas money and time and responsibility and the risk of bringing a stranger into your life when you had a kid depending on you. And yet, he looked at her again. Her cheeks were flushed from panic. Her coat was too thin for the damp cold outside, and the way she held her belly, it wasn't casual. It was protective, like she was guarding something precious from the whole world. "Okay," he said before he could talk himself out of it. "Do you have someone in Riverton? Family?" She nodded quickly. "My sister." "Are you safe staying here until morning?" Her eyes flicked to the corners of the station, to the exit, to the dark outside. I don't know." That was the answer that did it. Caleb exhaled slowly. "I can drive you." She stared at him like he'd spoken a different language. "What?" "I said I can drive you," he repeated more carefully this time. I'm not a creep, okay? I'm a dad, and I can't really sit here and watch you panic for 6 hours." Her mouth opened, then closed. 200 miles, she whispered again, like she needed to make sure he understood. That's far." "I know. Why would you do that?" Caleb's throat tightened with an emotion he didn't name. "Because someone should," he said quietly. For a long moment she didn't move. Then her shoulders sagged, like the fight had drained out of her all at once. She pressed the heel of her hand to her eyes. "I'm Leela Monroe." "Caleb," he replied. "Caleb Hartley." He nodded toward the charging station near the wall. "Let's plug your phone in for a minute, and you should drink some water. You look like you're about to pass out." Leela gave a small, shaky laugh, half disbelief, half relief. "I feel like I've been holding my breath for hours." Caleb walked with her to the outlet, keeping his pace slow. She limped slightly, and he noticed it immediately. "You hurt your foot?" he asked. It's fine," she said too quickly. Caleb gave her a look, one that said he raised a stubborn child and it didn't work on him. Leela sighed. "I twisted my ankle running. The bus was pulling out and I saw the taillights and Her voice broke again. "I ran anyway." Caleb handed her a bottle of water from the vending machine. "Sit," he said, pointing to the bench. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said, firmer this time. "Sit down." She sat. When she took a sip, her hands still shook. Caleb watched her for a moment, then asked softly, "How far along are you?" Leela looked down at her belly like she was still checking it was there. 7 months. Caleb's stomach tightened. 7 months, he repeated. "Okay, so we take breaks, we drive carefully, and if you feel anything weird, pain, dizziness, contractions, anything, you tell me immediately. No toughing it out." She nodded, eyes glossy. "Okay." A silence settled between them, not awkward exactly, just heavy with everything that hadn't been said yet. The station's loudspeaker crackled with an announcement about lost luggage. Somewhere, a child cried and was shushed. After a minute, Leela's phone buzzed to life. She looked at it, then her face paled. "What?" Caleb asked. She swallowed hard. "No signal, and I don't have anyone to call anyway." Caleb frowned. "No one?" "My sister's number is in my phone," she said. "But my phone, when it died earlier, it updated. I lost some contacts. She blinked fast. "I don't remember her number." Caleb stared. "You drove here without your sister's number?" "I didn't drive," she said. "I took a bus. I left fast." Caleb felt the story sharpening. "Why?" Leela's eyes darted away. "It's complicated." He didn't push. He'd learned in the years after his wife died that people told you the truth when they were ready, not when you demanded it. "Okay," he said gently. "Then we'll figure it out when we get closer. Do you know her address?" Leela nodded quickly. "Yes, I wrote it down." She pulled a small folded paper from her pocket like it was gold. Caleb looked at the address and nodded. "Good, that's enough." He offered his hand. "Come on, let's get you out of here." Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. Rain misted the parking lot and clung to Caleb's hair. His old pickup sat under a streetlight, paint chipped at the edges, but it ran. It always ran, because it had to. He opened the passenger door for Leela, then hesitated. "Do you need help getting in?" he asked. She bristled instinctively. I can do it. Caleb raised his hands in surrender. Okay, I'm just asking. Leela managed it, but her ankle made her wince as she lifted her leg. Caleb didn't comment. He just waited, steady and patient. Once she was inside, he adjusted the heater and pulled out a small blanket from the back seat, one his daughter kept for soccer tournaments. Here, he said, handing it over. It's clean. Leela wrapped herself around it and sighed like she'd been craving warmth for days. Caleb got behind the wheel and started the engine. The truck rumbled, and for a moment it felt like the whole night could turn into something manageable. He pulled out of the lot, the bus station shrinking behind them. Leela stared straight ahead as if looking back might shatter her. After 10 minutes of driving through quiet streets, Caleb asked softly, "You hungry?" Leela blinked. "What?" "You haven't eaten, I can tell." She tried to deny it, then stopped. "I ate a granola bar at noon." Caleb swore under his breath. He turned at the next exit and headed toward a late-night diner. No, I don't want you to spend money on me," Leela protested. "It's pancakes, not a vacation home." She gave a weak laugh. Pancakes sound like heaven. The diner was nearly empty, smelling like bacon and coffee and worn vinyl booths. A tired waitress greeted them with a nod that said she'd seen 1,000 midnight emergencies and didn't judge any of them. Caleb helped Lila slide into a booth, then ordered pancakes and eggs before she could argue. When the food came, Lila stared at it like she didn't trust herself to want it. Caleb watched her carefully. "Eat," he said. "I feel like I'm going to cry again," she admitted, voice small. Caleb shrugged, eyes on his coffee. "You can cry if you want." Lila's throat worked. Then she picked up her fork. As she ate, color returned to her face. Her shoulders loosened, and when she finally looked at Caleb again, her gaze was different. Less panic, more curiosity. "You have a kid," she said, as if connecting pieces. Caleb nodded. "Yeah, a daughter, Nora. She's 9. Lila's lips softened at the name. "Nora, that's pretty." "She picked it," Caleb said, and a small smile touched his mouth. "Well, sort of. My wife picked it before. He didn't finish. Lila's eyes lowered. "I'm sorry." Caleb breathed out slowly. 4 years. "Does it get easier?" Lila asked before she could stop herself. Caleb looked at her, surprised by the question's raw honesty. "It gets different," he said. "Some days feel like you can breathe. Some days feel like you're underwater again." Lila nodded, like she understood too well for someone her age. A silence stretched. Then Lila whispered, "That's why I'm going to Riverton." Caleb waited. "My husband," she began, then stopped, and her hand went to her belly again. He's not who I thought." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Did he hurt you?" Lila's eyes flashed, terrified. Not like that, but..." She swallowed. "He said I ruined his life." Caleb's stomach twisted. "He said if I wanted to keep the baby, I could do it alone, and then he took my car keys and told me to get out of the house." Caleb's grip tightened around his coffee mug. The ceramic creaked softly. "I thought it was a bluff," Lila whispered. "I thought he'd cool down, but then he changed the locks." Caleb didn't speak. His anger was too big, too immediate. He forced it down because Lila was already trembling. "I went to my friend's place, but my husband started texting her, calling her, threatening to get her landlord involved, telling her I was unstable." Caleb's eyes hardened. "He's isolating you." Lila nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "My sister, Mara, she left years ago. She always told me if anything ever happened, I should come to her. She said she'd always have a place for me." Caleb's chest tightened. "So you ran?" "I ran," she whispered. Caleb stared at her, then at the table, then back. "You did the right thing." Lila shook her head. "I don't know. I'm scared all the time. I'm scared he'll find me. I'm scared I'm making mistakes. I'm scared." Her voice broke. "I'm scared I won't be a good mom." Caleb's face softened in a way that surprised even him. "You're already a good mom," he said quietly. Lila blinked. "How do you know?" Because you're scared, Caleb said. Bad parents aren't scared. They don't worry about being good. They just do what they do. Leela stared at him, and something in her expression cracked open, like his words gave her permission to believe she wasn't hopeless. Caleb slid out of the booth. Okay, bathroom break. Then we drive. Leela nodded. As they walked back to the truck, the rain had slowed to a thin drizzle. The world felt quieter, like it was holding its breath. 200 miles. Caleb started the engine and pulled onto the highway. The road stretched ahead, dark and wet and endless, lit only by headlights and distant signs. Leela curled under the blanket, her hands folded over her belly. After half an hour, she dozed. Caleb drove in silence, his mind spinning. He wasn't supposed to be part of anyone's story. He'd built his life small on purpose. Work, Nora, home. No surprises, no risks, because risks were what killed the people you loved. But then he glanced at Leela sleeping beside him, her face still tense even in rest, and he felt something sharp and unfamiliar. Protectiveness. Not romantic, not yet, just human. Somewhere near mile marker 58, Leela woke with a gasp, clutching her belly. Caleb's heart jumped. What? Are you okay? Leela breathed hard. The baby. It kicked really hard. Caleb blinked, then exhaled, half relieved, half amused. That's good, right? Leela laughed, shaky but real. Yeah, it's good. It just startled me. Caleb nodded. Okay, that kid's got opinions already. Leela's laugh grew a fraction steadier. For the first time that night, Caleb heard something in her voice that wasn't fear. It was life. They drove through small towns and empty stretches of road. Caleb stopped twice so Leela could use a restroom and stretch her ankle. At the second stop, she leaned against the truck, staring at the stars. I forgot what quiet feels like, she said softly. Caleb leaned beside her, arms crossed. Quiet can be good, he said, or it can be loud in a different way. Leela nodded slowly. I used to talk to Mara in the dark when we were kids. We shared a room. We'd whisper under the blankets, pretending we were spies. Caleb looked at her. What happened? Leela's face tightened. Our mom got sick. Dad wasn't... He didn't handle it well. He drank. Mara left when she turned 18. I hated her for it. I thought she abandoned me. Caleb waited. But she didn't, Leela said, voice thick. She sent money when she could. She called. I was just too proud, too angry. I didn't answer. Caleb swallowed. And now you're going to her. Leela nodded. I'm hoping she still wants me. Caleb looked out at the highway, then back at her. If she's anything like you, she'll want you. Leela stared, surprised. Caleb cleared his throat. Get back in, it's cold. They drove again. Somewhere around 3:30 a.m., Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at the caller ID. Aunt Jen. His stomach clenched. He answered fast, keeping his voice low. Jen? Caleb. Jen's voice was tight. Nora's asleep on my couch. She kept asking where you were. I'm sorry, Caleb whispered. I got stuck. Caleb, Jen interrupted. Where are you? Caleb hesitated. He didn't know how to explain this without sounding insane. Then Leela stirred and whispered, Is that your daughter? Caleb swallowed. It's my sister, he said to Leela, then to Jen. I'm on the highway. What? Why? Caleb closed his eyes. I'll explain later. Can you stay with Nora until morning? Jen went quiet. Then she sighed. You're scaring me. I know, Caleb said, but I'm okay. Nora's okay. I'll be home by noon. Caleb, Jen said, softer now. You haven't driven overnight since... He didn't answer. Jen exhaled. Okay, I'll stay, But you call me when you can. I will. He hung up and stared at the road, pulse pounding. Leela's voice was small. I'm sorry. I'm messing up your life. Caleb shook his head, jaw tight. You're not. You are driving 200 miles for a stranger, she said. That's not normal. Caleb's voice came out rough. Neither is leaving a pregnant woman stranded in a bus station at midnight. The world's full of not normal. Leela went quiet. After a moment, she whispered, Your wife. What happened? Caleb's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't like talking about it. He didn't like the way grief opened a door in him that he worked hard to keep shut. She died giving birth, he said finally. Leela's breath caught. Oh. Caleb's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. Complications. They said it was rare. They said they did everything. Leela stared at him, horror and sympathy on her face. And you raised Nora alone? Caleb nodded once. Yeah. Leela looked down at her belly. Her voice shook. That's my worst fear. Caleb didn't look at her. You're allowed to be scared, but you're not alone. The words surprised him as soon as they left his mouth. Not alone. He didn't even know her, and yet he meant it. The sky began to lighten near dawn, turning from black to deep blue to a soft gray that promised morning. Leela watched it like it was a miracle. I didn't think I'd see morning, she admitted. Caleb glanced at her. Why? Leela's mouth trembled. My husband, he said, if you leave, don't come back. I'll make sure you regret it. Caleb's jaw clenched hard enough to ache. What's his name? Leela hesitated. Ethan. Caleb repeated it quietly, like storing it away. Ethan. They crossed into Riverton County just after sunrise. The world looked different here. More trees, fewer billboards, mist hanging low over fields like a blanket. Lila sat up straighter, tension returning. It's up here, she said, pointing. Caleb followed her directions through winding roads until they reached a small neighborhood of modest houses. A few porch lights were still on, and someone's sprinklers hissed softly in the morning air. Lila's fingers curled tight around the blanket. This is it, she whispered, pointing to a pale blue house with a white porch swing. Caleb pulled to the curb and shut off the engine. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Lila's breath started to shake. What if she's not there? She whispered. What if she hates me? Caleb turned to her. Do you want me to walk up with you? Lila nodded immediately, then looked embarrassed. If that's okay. Caleb nodded. Of course. He climbed out, walked around, and helped her step down carefully because of her ankle. This time she didn't protest. She let him support her elbow, and he felt how light she was, how exhausted. They stood at the bottom of the walkway. The house was quiet. No movement, no sounds. Lila stared at the door like it might bite. Caleb said softly, Breathe. Lila swallowed, then walked up and knocked. Once, twice. Nothing. Her face crumpled. Caleb's chest tightened. He knocked again, louder this time. Finally, a light snapped on inside. Footsteps, a chain sliding. The door opened just a crack. A woman stood there in a robe, hair in a messy braid, eyes sharp with sleep. She looked 38, maybe, strong-boned, tired in a way Caleb recognized. Her gaze landed on Lila, and her entire face changed. Mara? Lila choked out. The woman stared like she was seeing a ghost. Then her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! Lila? Lila's knees buckled. Caleb caught her automatically, steadying her as she sobbed. I'm sorry I didn't answer your calls. I'm sorry I didn't know how to. Mara flung the door open and ran down the steps barefoot, grabbing Lila like she'd been holding her breath for years. You're here, Mara kept saying. You're here. Then Mara pulled back and saw the belly. Her face went pale. "Lila, are you—" Lila nodded, crying harder. "I'm pregnant." Mara's eyes filled. Come inside right now." Caleb watched them, relief washing over him so hard his knees went weak. Mara noticed him for the first time, eyes narrowing slightly, protective. "And you are?" she asked. Caleb lifted his hands. "Caleb, I drove her here. She missed the last bus." Mara stared at him, then at Lila. Lila whispered, "He helped me. He didn't have to. He just did." Mara's expression softened, still cautious but grateful. "Thank you," she said, voice thick. "Thank you for bringing her." Caleb nodded. "Of course."
He expected that to be the end of it. He'd done what he came to do. He could turn around, drive home, go back to his small life. But then Leela swayed, turning pale. Caleb's heart jumped. "Leela?" Leela whispered, I feel weird." Mara's eyes widened. "What kind of weird?" Leela pressed a hand to her belly. Tight, like it's squeezing. Caleb's blood turned to ice. Mara grabbed her shoulders. "How often?" Leela's eyes squeezed shut. "I don't know. I haven't timed. Mara looked at Caleb, panic flaring. "She's having contractions." Caleb's body moved before his mind caught up. "Hospital," he said. Leela shook her head violently. "No, I can't. Ethan." Mara's voice cut through. "Leela, listen to me. If you're in labor, we go now." Leela's breath hitched, fear and pain tangling together. Caleb stepped closer, voice low and steady. "Leela, look at me. You're safe. Ethan isn't here." She stared at him, eyes wild. Caleb said, "I lost my wife in childbirth. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because I won't gamble with you. We go to the hospital." Leela's face crumpled. A tear slid down. Then she nodded, shaking. Okay. Mara ran back inside to grab keys. Caleb guided Leela carefully toward the truck. "Wait," Mara called, rushing out with a bag. She'd moved like someone who handled emergencies for a living. "I'm driving." Caleb shook his head. "I know the way back out to the main road. I'll follow." Mara looked at him, measuring. Then she nodded once. "Okay, follow close." They drove in a tight line to Riverton General. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and coffee and fear. The fluorescent lights here were harsher than the stations, clinical, unforgiving. Leela was taken back fast. Mara filled forms with shaking hands. Caleb stood to the side, feeling like he'd stepped into a story that wasn't his, except somehow it was. Hours blurred. Nurses moved. Machines beeped. A doctor spoke quickly about premature labor and dehydration and stress. Caleb sat in a plastic chair, elbows on knees, hands clasped tight enough to ache. He stared at the floor and thought about the last time he sat in a hospital like this, hearing words that changed everything. Mara paced, wiping tears off her face like she hated them. Finally, a nurse came out. "Family?" she asked. Mara stepped forward. "I'm her sister." The nurse nodded. "She's stable. We stopped the contractions for now, but she's on bed rest, and, oh, she asked if the man who brought her is still here." Caleb's head lifted. Mara looked at him, surprised. "She asked for you." Caleb swallowed, then stood. "Yeah, I'm here." The nurse led him back. Leela lay in a hospital bed, pale, hair messy, eyes tired. When she saw Caleb, she cried again, quiet tears that slipped down into her hairline. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Caleb stepped closer. "Stop apologizing," he said gently. "You're okay. That's what matters." Lila's hand trembled as she reached out. Caleb took it without thinking. Her fingers were cold. "I thought I was going to lose her," Lila whispered. "I thought I was going to lose the baby, and then I thought, maybe I deserve it because I ran, because I'm doing everything wrong." Caleb's throat tightened. "You don't deserve bad things because you're trying to survive." Lila stared at him, eyes shining. "How are you so calm?" Caleb let out a shaky breath. "I'm not calm," he admitted. "I'm just Used to pretending. Lila's lips quivered. You drove 200 miles for me. Caleb looked down at their hands. Yeah? Why? Caleb hesitated. Then he said the truth, quiet and raw. Because I keep imagining if my wife had been alone and scared and needed help, I'd want someone to stop. I'd want someone to show up. Lila squeezed his hand weakly. In the doorway, Mara watched them with a complicated expression, gratitude mixed with caution, as if she didn't know what this connection meant yet. The doctor came in with instructions: bed rest, monitoring, stay in Riverton, avoid stress. Mara nodded, fierce. She's not going anywhere. When they finally left Lila to rest, Mara pulled Caleb into the hallway. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you did what you did, but thank you. Caleb nodded. She's your sister. Mara swallowed. My sister married a man who made her disappear. Caleb's eyes hardened. Does he know she's here? Mara shook her head. Not yet. Caleb took a slow breath. He will find out eventually. Mara's jaw clenched. Let him come. Caleb looked at her. Do you have a plan? Mara hesitated. I have a couch, I have a spare room, and I have rage. Caleb almost smiled. Rage helps, he said. Then, after a beat, he added, but a plan is better. Mara studied him. What do you do, Caleb? He said, I'm a mechanic, but I used to do security installs, cameras, alarms, side work. Mara's eyes widened slightly. You can help us protect her. Caleb nodded once. Yeah, I can. That should have been the end of his involvement. But it wasn't. Because when he drove home that afternoon, exhausted and wired, he couldn't stop thinking about Lila in that hospital bed, about the way she apologized for existing, about the way fear lived in her bones, and about the fact that Mara had looked at him like he was a lifeline. When Caleb finally got home, Nora was at the kitchen table in pajamas, hair in a messy ponytail, eating cereal like it was dinner. She looked up, eyes sharp. Where were you? Caleb froze. Jen stood near the sink, arms crossed. Tell her, she said. Caleb exhaled. I had to help someone. Nora narrowed her eyes. Like a cat? Caleb blinked. Not a cat. A dog? No. Nora leaned forward. A person. Caleb nodded slowly. Yeah. Nora's gaze went serious in that way kids sometimes do when they sense adult world heaviness. Were they hurt? Caleb swallowed. They were scared. Nora nodded like she understood. Okay, she said simply. Then she added, Did you help? Caleb's throat tightened. Yeah. Nora ate another spoonful of cereal, then said matter-of-factly, Then you did the right thing. Caleb stared at his daughter, heart twisting. You don't even know what happened. Nora shrugged. If someone is scared and you can help, you help. Jen rolled her eyes softly. She gets that from her mother, she said. Caleb's chest tightened, but he didn't correct her. He just nodded. That night, after Nora fell asleep, Caleb sat on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe. He thought about Lila's baby kicking, about Nora being born into loss, about how life could change in one night at a bus station. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered, cautiously. Hello? Mara's voice came through. It's Mara. Lila's asleep, but she asked me to thank you again. And I wanted to ask, could you come back this weekend? Just for a day. Caleb closed his eyes. Why? Mara hesitated. Because Ethan called our mom today. Caleb's stomach dropped. Your mom? Yeah, Mara said bitterly. The same mom who pretends she doesn't notice when men treat her daughters like property. Ethan told her Lila ran away and is unstable and might hurt the baby. He's setting the story. Caleb's jaw clenched. He's building a narrative. Yes, Mara whispered, and I need help. Caleb took a slow breath. I'll come. Over the next weeks, Caleb drove to Riverton more than he ever thought he would.
Sometimes with Nora, sometimes alone when Jen could babysit. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself he was just helping them set up security and figure out legal steps. But something happened in those visits. Something small. Lila got out of bed rest slowly under doctor supervision. She sat on Mara's porch wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. Caleb fixed a broken porch step without being asked. Nora sat beside Lila with a stack of library books and read out loud in a dramatic voice that made Lila laugh until she cried. And the first time Nora touched Lila's belly and felt the baby kick, her eyes went huge. "It's like an alien," Nora whispered reverently. Lila laughed through tears. "A nice alien," she corrected. Nora nodded, serious. "A baby alien." Caleb watched them from the porch swing, something warm and strange unfurling in his chest. Not replacing, not erasing, just adding. One Saturday morning, while Mara was on the phone with a lawyer, Lila sat at the kitchen table with Nora, helping her with a school project. Nora asked, blunt as always, "Are you scared to be a mom?"
Lila froze. Caleb paused mid-coffee sip. Lila swallowed. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "I'm really scared." Nora nodded like that made sense. "My dad was scared too." Lila looked up. "He was?" Nora leaned in, whispering like it was a secret. "He cried in the laundry room one time. I saw him." Caleb coughed loudly. "Nora!" Nora blinked. "What? It's true." Lila's eyes softened. "He cried?" Nora nodded. "Yeah, but he still makes pancakes, so I think crying doesn't mean you can't do stuff." Lila stared at Nora like she'd just been handed a map out of the dark. "Your daughter is wise," Lila whispered. Caleb's throat tightened. "She's also brutally honest." Nora smiled, proud. That night, Even showed up. Not at Mara's house, at the grocery store. Caleb was loading bags into his truck when he noticed a sleek black sedan pull in behind them. The door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, clean-cut, expensive jacket. The kind of face that smiled without warmth. Lila froze. Her hand flew to her belly. Caleb felt his body go still, protective instincts sharpening. Ethan's eyes locked on Lila. "There you are," he said, voice calm in a way that was terrifying. "You've been making everyone worry." Lila's breath hitched. Mara stepped in front of her like a shield. "You don't get to talk to her," Mara snapped. Ethan smiled slightly. "I'm her husband." Caleb stepped forward. "And you're trespassing in her space," he said evenly. Ethan's gaze flicked to Caleb, assessing. "Who are you?" Caleb didn't blink. "A person who stops when someone needs help." Ethan's smile thinned. "So you're the hero." Caleb felt rage rise, hot and steady. He kept his voice calm because Nora was beside them, holding a loaf of bread like a weapon. Ethan's eyes slid to the child. "And you brought your kid. Classy." Nora's chin lifted. "My dad is classy," she said, dead serious. Mara snorted despite herself. Ethan ignored Nora. He looked at Lila again. "Come home." Lila's voice trembled, but she didn't move. "No." Ethan's eyes hardened. "You don't know what you're doing." Lila swallowed. "I know I'm not safe with you." The words hung in the air like a slap. Ethan's jaw clenched. "You're emotional. You're pregnant. You're letting strangers fill your head." Caleb stepped closer, voice low. "Back off." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "Or what?" Caleb held his stare. "Or you'll find out the hard way that people are watching you now." Ethan's eyes flicked around, noticing for the first time the way a few shoppers had slowed to watch, the way Nora stood close to Lila, the way Mara's hands were shaking but her stance didn't move. Ethan's smile returned, thin and dangerous. "Fine," he said softly. "We'll do this the official way." He turned and walked back to his car. Before getting in, he looked at Lila once more. "You can't hide forever," he said. Then he drove away. Leela's knees buckled. Caleb caught her, steadying her as she cried silently. Mara's voice shook with fury. He's going to file something. Custody, mental health, anything. Caleb nodded, jaw tight. Then we get ahead of it. That week, Caleb helped Mara install cameras. He drove Leela to doctor appointments. He watched Nora become fiercely attached to the baby she called the alien. And late at night, after Nora fell asleep on Mara's couch, Caleb and Leela sat at the kitchen table with tea that went cold between them. One night, Leela whispered, "I don't know why you keep coming back." Caleb stared at his hands. "I don't either," he admitted. Leela's eyes filled. I'm not trying to replace anything." Caleb's chest tightened. "I know." Leela swallowed. "But when you look at me, do you just see a problem to fix?" Caleb looked up, startled. Leela's voice shook. "Because everyone else only ever saw what I could do for them, or what I cost them, or how inconvenient I was." Caleb's throat burned. "When I look at you," he said slowly, "I see someone who ran for her baby, someone who kept going even when she was terrified, someone who deserves to be safe." Leela's tear fell. "That's not what I asked." Caleb's heart hammered. He understood suddenly what she was really asking. "Do you see me? Not my pregnancy, not my fear, not my mess. Me." Caleb swallowed. "I see you," he whispered, "and it scares me." Leela's breath caught. "Why?" Caleb's voice broke just slightly. "Because the last time I let myself see someone like that, I lost her." Leela's eyes softened with understanding and pain. Caleb stared at her, and for the first time in years, he let the grief sit beside something else. Hope. Leela went into labor on a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. Ordinary, messy, unplanned. Life didn't wait for perfect timing. Caleb was there when Mara called. He drove like his heart was on fire. Nora rode in the back seat, clutching a stuffed elephant she'd insisted the baby needed. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Nurses, doctors, bright lights, Mara's voice steady but shaking, Leela crying and apologizing, and Caleb telling her, "Stop apologizing, breathe." Hours later, when the baby finally arrived, a small, furious, perfect girl, Leela sobbed with relief. "She's here. She's really here." Caleb stood beside the bed, tears burning in his eyes. He hadn't expected that. He hadn't expected to feel so much. Mara handed Nora the baby for a careful moment, the nurse hovering. Nora stared down, awed. "She's tiny," Nora whispered.
Lila's voice cracked. Do you want to name her?" Mara blinked. Lila shook her head. "No, I want Nora to be part of this. She's been part of my survival." Nora's eyes widened. "Me?" Lila nodded, tears slipping. "Yes." Nora swallowed hard like she was about to accept a sacred mission. Then she whispered, "What about Hope?" The room went still. Lila stared at Nora like the name hit somewhere deep. "Hope," she repeated. Caleb's throat tightened. Mara wiped her face. "That's actually perfect." Lila nodded, crying harder. "Hope Monroe," she whispered. "Hello, Hope." Nora smiled so big it almost broke Caleb's heart. Outside the room later, Mara pulled Caleb aside. "You did this," she said quietly. Caleb frowned. "I didn't." "You showed up. You kept showing up. And now, my sister has a daughter and she's alive and she's safe." Caleb swallowed. "I'm glad." Mara studied him. "Are you in love with her?" Caleb froze. Mara held his gaze. "Don't lie. I can handle truth." Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know." Mara nodded once, like she respected that. "Then figure it out," she said. "Because she deserves someone who knows." That night, Caleb sat in the hallway while Lila slept. Nora was curled in a chair, snoring softly with a blanket over her head. Caleb stared at the floor and thought about promises.
He'd promised his wife he'd take care of Nora. He'd done that. But he'd never promised himself he'd live again. His phone buzzed. A message from Jen. "Nora okay?" Caleb texted back. "She's okay. I'm okay too." He stared at the words. They felt strange. He felt Lila's presence like gravity, like a new orbit. Weeks passed. Lila stayed at Mara's house. Ethan filed paperwork, legal threats, accusations, attempts to paint her unstable. But Mara had a lawyer now. Caleb helped gather texts, recordings, timelines. He installed cameras. He built a paper trail the way mechanics built engines, piece by piece, careful, undeniable. The court hearing came on a gray Thursday. Caleb sat behind Lila as she held Hope close, her face pale but steady. Mara sat beside her, fierce. Ethan sat across the room in a suit, calm as ever, like he was the victim. When the judge asked Lila why she left, Lila's voice trembled. Then she looked at Hope, and something in her hardened into truth. "I left because I was afraid my husband would hurt me. And I left because he told me he didn't want this baby unless I disappeared." Ethan's lawyer objected. The judge frowned. Evidence was presented. Text messages, witness statements, medical notes about stress-induced preterm labor risk. Caleb watched Ethan's calm smile crack by millimeters. When the ruling came, temporary restraining order, supervised visitation only pending evaluation, Lila cried silently, relief shaking her body. Outside the courthouse, Mara hugged her so hard, Hope squeaked. Caleb stood a step away, heart pounding. Lila turned and looked at him, tears on her cheeks. "You drove me," she whispered. 200 miles. Caleb nodded. "And you kept coming back," she said. Caleb's voice was rough. "Yeah." Lila took a shaky breath. "Why?" Caleb stared at her and finally understood. She wasn't asking for facts. She was asking for the truth that scared him. He stepped closer. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out, not for the baby, not for Mara, for her. "I think," he said quietly, "I think I came back because when you ran into that bus station, you looked like you needed someone. And I know what it is to need someone and not have them." Lila's lips parted. Caleb swallowed. "And then you smiled at Nora. You laughed. You fought. You made my daughter feel like the world wasn't just loss." Lila's eyes filled again. "Caleb." Caleb's throat tightened. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I'm scared to love anyone again." Lila nodded, voice shaking. "Me too." Caleb looked at her. "But I'm more scared of waking up one day and realizing I didn't choose the life that was right in front of me." Lila's breath hitched. Caleb whispered, "I see you. Not just the baby, not just the crisis, you." Lila's tears spilled. Then she did something brave. She stepped into him, Hope between them, small and warm and alive. Caleb's arms wrapped around them carefully, like he was holding something holy. "I don't know what we are yet," Lila whispered into his shoulder, "but thank you for showing up." Caleb closed his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, and he meant it. They took it slow, no rushing, no pretending grief didn't exist. Caleb talked about his wife in the way he rarely did, softly, respectfully. Lila listened without jealousy because she understood. She knew love didn't erase love. Nora stayed the loudest advocate in the house. The first time Caleb and Lila held hands on the couch, Nora looked up from her homework and said, "Finally!" Caleb groaned. "Nora!" Nora shrugged. "You were being dumb." Lila laughed, real laughter that made Hope startle and then settle. By spring, Caleb was driving to Riverton less because he had to, and more because he wanted to. Then one day, he realized he didn't want to drive at all. He wanted them with him, so he asked. Not in a dramatic way, not in a grand speech. Just one evening in his kitchen, while Nora did homework and Lila rocked Hope, and the air smelled like spaghetti sauce and warm bread. "Do you want to come home with me?" Caleb asked softly. Lila froze. Caleb's voice shook. "Not Not as a rescue, not as charity, as us, if you want, if you're ready. Leela's eyes filled. She looked down at Hope, then at Nora, then back at Caleb. I want that, she whispered. I want it so much. Nora raised her pencil like a judge. Approved! Caleb laughed and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, pretending it was nothing. The proposal happened months later on a random Tuesday because their life still didn't care about perfect timing. Caleb had tried planning something. He really had. A nice dinner, a scenic spot, a ring hidden in a dessert. Every time something interrupted. Hope got sick, Nora had a school event, Leela had a lawyer call. Life happened. Then one night, Caleb came home to find Leela in the living room, hair messy, Hope asleep on her chest, Nora curled beside them reading a book out loud in a dramatic voice. The lamp cast a warm circle of light. The house smelled like baby powder and cocoa. The world outside was cold, but inside everything was soft. And Caleb realized this messy, ordinary moment was the most beautiful thing he'd ever survived to see. He stood there, overwhelmed, and the words fell out. "Marry me," he said. Nora stopped mid-sentence. "Dad!" Leela blinked, startled. "Caleb, what?" Caleb crossed the room, kneeling beside the couch. He didn't have music. He didn't have a photographer. He didn't even have the ring in his hand yet. He just had truth. "I had plans," he said, voice shaking. "I had a whole thing, but I keep waiting for the perfect moment, and I realized the perfect moment is when you're here, when Hope is safe, when Nora is laughing, when our house feels like a home instead of a place we survive in." Leela's eyes filled instantly. Caleb swallowed. "I don't want to just be the guy who drove you 200 miles. I want to be the man who stays. For all of it. The hard days and the good days. The fear and the joy. I love you, Leela. And I love Hope. And His voice broke. I love the life we're building." Leela's mouth trembled. "Caleb!" Nora whispered loudly. "Say yes." Caleb laughed through tears. "Nora!" Nora shrugged. "What? This is important." Caleb pulled the ring from his pocket. Simple, small diamond, nothing flashy. A ring that said forever in the quietest way. "Leela Monroe, will you marry me?" He stared at her like she didn't trust happiness. Then she looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully, and something in her softened into belief. "Yes," she whispered. Caleb's breath caught. Leela repeated stronger. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes!" Nora threw her book in the air. "Finally!" Hope startled awake and began to wail. And somehow, in the chaos of laughter and crying and baby cries, Caleb felt more peace than he'd felt in years. They married in the backyard the following summer. Small, intimate. String lights hung like stars. Nora wore a dress she insisted was official flower girl material. Hope wore a tiny headband and drooled on everything. Mara stood in the front row, eyes shining, arms crossed like she was daring the universe to try anything again. Jen cried openly, wiping mascara with a napkin. Caleb and Leela wrote their own vows. Caleb's voice shook when he said, "You came into my life terrified and brave at the same time. And you reminded me that love doesn't end when someone dies. It changes shape. It grows, and if we let it, it becomes a home." Leela cried when she said, "You stopped when you didn't have to. You drove when it wasn't your responsibility. And then you stayed, not because you felt sorry for me, but because you saw me. You gave me a family when I thought I'd lost the right to one." When they kissed, Nora cheered loud enough the neighbors probably heard. And later, under the string lights, as music played softly and Hope slept in Mara's arms, Caleb held Leela close and whispered, "Remember the bus station?" Leela smiled against his shoulder. "I missed the last bus." Caleb kissed her forehead. "No, he said softly. You found the right ride. Leela laughed through tears, because it was true. Sometimes the worst nights aren't endings, they're doorways. Sometimes a missed bus is the universe forcing you into a different path, one you never would have chosen if you weren't desperate. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is say, I need help, and let someone answer. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can change everything, share it with someone who needs hope today. Like this video and subscribe, because every week we tell stories about second chances, found family, and the beautiful truth that showing up again and again is the real definition of love.